Hey there, fellas. Mike Yarbrough here. I've got a little bonus episode for you guys this week. This is something I've not done before. I'm actually posting an episode where I was actually interviewed by somebody else on the Wolf and Iron podcast, and I'm doing it because it was just a fantastic conversation, and you guys need to hear this. A week or so ago, I was interviewed by Goggans and Justin Kier from the Suited for Life podcast. And these guys just ask some great questions. Now, they're a fairly new podcast, so they're kind of up and coming and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if you'd hear about this episode otherwise, but the conversations are fantastic. We talk a lot about my different businesses and how they kind of got started, Rustic in Maine and Wolf and Iron. And actually, I think one of the guys refers to, I think they call it Wolf and Maine or something like that at one point. All is forgiven, guys. No big deal. This is what happens when you have too many conjunctions in your business names. But we talk about how the businesses got started, how I overcame some of the mindset that was holding me back from kind of getting going in the entrepreneurial way. But also we talk about just the head trash that every guy deals with that prevents us from moving forward. We talk a good bit about legacy, and they just ask some really great questions. And I want you guys to hear this conversation. I know you're going to get a lot from it. So here we go. This is from the Suited for Life podcast. Enjoy.
The Suited for Life podcast, equipping men with the armor they need to conquer life's many challenges. From forging stronger families and relationships, to succeeding in their businesses and careers, to living healthier and longer lives. You're a man living in the world eager to strip you of your manhood, but we've dedicated this podcast to sharing what's helped us and our guests build unstoppable mindsets, closer relationships with God, healthier bodies, and the belief that, as a man, it is possible to find fulfillment and purpose in this world. And now, here are your hosts, Justin and Jason.
All right. Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode of the Suited for Life podcast. We really appreciate it as usual. And today is actually a super cool episode because we get to have an amazing conversation with a guy named Mike Yarbrough. If you haven't heard of Mike, he owns two businesses. One is called Rustic in Maine, where they make absolutely incredible wedding rings for men. And I highly suggest that you check them out if you haven't already, because you will be blown away, I promise you. And we talk a little bit about that and the rings and kind of how the whole idea got started in today's episode. But he also owns runs an organization called Wolf in Maine, which is very similar to Suited for Life, in that the whole mission of the organization is to help men, to be better husbands, better fathers, better community leaders, all that stuff. So we hope you get a lot out of today's episode. We got into some pretty deep topics, but topics I think men will really appreciate and really get a lot of value from. So take a few minutes, give it a listen, and we hope you enjoy. So let's jump right in.
All right, everybody. So Jason and I are here with Mike Yarbrough from several places, from Wolf and Iron, from Rustic in Maine. I'll turn it over to him in just a second, but I came across Mike's stuff a while back and just really liked his take on everything having to do with masculinity. He's got a really interesting kind of perspective on things, and from everything I've read of his and the podcast that I've listened to, it seems like a lot of it lines up too when it comes to being a Christian man and what that really looks like in our world today. So he's got several different online avenues that he has. So I'm going to turn it over to him and let him kind of give a little bit of a rundown on what he's all about, the stuff that he's got going on right now, and then we'll jump into a few questions from there. So, Mike, if you don't mind, tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Good to be hanging out with you guys, Justin and Jason. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys today. It's always interesting when I have to tell about what I do, because it sounds like I've got two different things going on, but they actually kind of come together in a lot of ways. So the first thing is actually Wolf and Iron. And so that's one of the things that you mentioned. If people go to wolfandiron.com, they can find the blog, they can see the podcast, they can see the products out there. And that began about 5 years ago. And it's really a mission of mine to help men heed the high call that's on their lives. And that really just means help you guys to be the best fathers and husbands and leaders and providers and example setters that you can be, and to really thrive in the areas of life where guys just have a lot of struggles, mainly because we don't have the good examples of fathers. We don't always have good examples of friends and other guys who are doing really well in life. And so we kind of are out there on our own trying to figure things out. And we really need some coaching. We need a tribe. We need other guys. We need podcasts like this to help us find our way. And so that's what Wolf and Iron is all about. And we can go into more details about that, but we've got a store out there where we sell some products. We've got a free Facebook group where guys can connect. We've got a podcast, as I mentioned, and a blog as well. And so a lot of cool things happening in that space. Rustic in Maine is a project that actually started back in 2016, and I went full time with that last June, so 2017. And essentially, what we do is we create wedding rings out of historic woods and other unique materials. And that really just kind of began as almost like just a side project, a little hobby. And as I began exploring more about the idea of creating rings that really had meaning. So when I say historic woods, for example, we have woods from like the World War II battleship, the USS North Carolina. We've got rifle stocks from World War I, World War II. We incorporate those into our rings. People will send us things from like Grandpa's barn, and we'll use those as rings. And so as people began to hear about all the things we do, their minds, the wheels start turning, and they think about different ideas of things they could do. And so that really began as a just sort of a side project. And actually, it was simply I created a small wooden ring, and actually created a blog article out of it on Wolf and Iron, and it quickly became our #1 article out there. And if you look up how to make a wooden ring, I think it's still #1 on Google.
That's pretty cool.
And so that was like, okay, people care about these things. How do I make a business out of this? And so eventually it sort of, after I got the idea down and the process down to a good enough point to make these rings, we launched that business, and it's just been going like a shot. It's been awesome. And so that's our primary moneymaker. That's the breadwinner. That's where I spend most of my time. And then Wolf and Iron is still a project that is ramping up, even though we've got thousands of followers and thousands of listeners for the podcast.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And I know when I came across your stuff, it was a while back. It was well over a year ago. And so I don't even think you even had Rustic in Maine at the time. And so it was just in the last couple months that I came across that site. And yeah, I got to tell you, man, they're all pretty cool. I have several that I've picked out. I just have to decide which one I want now. So my wife was laughing at me the other day. She was like, "What are you looking at? You're making notes?" And I was like, "Yeah, no, I'm just picking this out. It's cool. Don't worry about it."
Yeah, and I'll jump in here too, Mike, because I don't want people thinking that they're just saying that because Mike's on the show. But I'm telling you guys, anyone listening, please check out the website, because first and foremost, the concept itself is incredible. And I didn't even realize, man, until you just said that people could send their own personal things to you to make a ring, which is even more amazing. But just like Justin, I came home the first day I saw him and showed my wife. I said, "This," and I already know the one it is too, the one I want. But this is the one I want. We're going to get this ring because they're amazing. I mean, just conceptually, it's one thing if it's just a piece of wood. Fine, it's still beautiful. It's the concept behind it and the amazing look of them. So anyone listening, I highly encourage you to check out the site, because they are amazing rings.
So it's interesting, your guys, the reaction that you're having is the same reaction that so many of our customers talked about. Their wives or soon to be wives will say, I was taking my husband out trying to find a wedding ring. He didn't really care about it. And then he came across your site and saw what you did. And he was like, "Well, these are cool." And it's a totally different way of thinking about a wedding ring, right? It's not just a piece of gold that you wear on your finger. These things have story. We have a lot of woods that we use that are from whiskey barrels and things like that. We're actually thinking about taking a trip over to the UK, but also to hop over to Ireland and Scotland and try to make some relationships there with some of the whiskey and producers over in that region to kind of to bring some of those barrels that are harder to find here, some of that wood back to the States, and begin putting those in rings as well. So there's a lot of cool stuff that comes from it, and maybe a fun trip for us as well.
Absolutely. Hey, so along those lines, in one of your podcasts, you mentioned that you were in Asheville with your wife, I believe, and you noticed all these stores that were geared more towards women, and you noticed there was a void of stores geared towards men. Was that the impetus for Rustic in Maine? Is that where it started, or did you already have Rustic in Maine at the time?
No, that was actually, believe it or not, that was the impetus for Wolf and Iron.
Oh, okay.
So we're up there in Asheville, and for those who don't know, Asheville is a very hippie town. A lot of people who came there thinking they were going to be, I don't know, just a rock star or whatever hippie dreams are, and they end up just being kind of a homeless person on the street. There's a lot of those, kind of sad stories, but there's also a lot of art and a lot of culture and things like that there. And a lot of stores that have like crystals in them and, things that ladies like generally. And I thought, this place really needs a man's store. And we literally came up the next day. We went to a different part of the downtown area. And the first store we came to was like this manly kind of store. It had all kinds of like, American flag in the back and leather goods, and it smelled great. And I was like, it was confirmation to me that notion that I had, that people are looking for something masculine, was right. And that I've got to, at the time, so that, like I said, this was 5+ years ago. At the time, I had really kind of talked myself out of a lot of things, as if my ideas weren't valid. And then it was almost like, this is validation. Here I've had another good idea, and I see somebody else running with it. How often am I going to continue allowing these things to just pass me up? When am I going to actually get in the game? And so that's when Wolf and Iron began.
Gotcha. And then how did you kind of make that shift from, okay, I'm actually getting over that fear a little bit, and I'm actually going to start putting myself out there. I'm going to get involved in this whole new world called Wolf and Iron. And then even from there to okay, I'm going to launch this thing called Rustic in Maine. What were some of the big things that you had to overcome to get to that point?
I think this was a multi-year challenge for me, because when Wolf launched, I really began it sort of with this idea of, I want to be in the space, I want to help fill the void and this vacuum that's happening because of all the fatherlessness that's out there. My dad was an alcoholic. He actually died last year from his alcoholism. And
sorry.
Yeah. And but even before that, just knowing that there's, fatherlessness is rampant out there, and that it creates this void out there that people are going to try and fill with things that aren't necessarily good. They're going to lead guys down a wrong path. And so I had to become comfortable with just getting my voice out there and being a part of whatever that solution might be for men. And that actually took a while. The first year of Wolf and Iron was really just me writing a blog just to see if this was just going to be like if this was a project that I wanted to do long term, or if it was going to kind of fizzle out and I was going to be tired of it after 6 months or a year. So after that first year, I was like, I'm more emboldened than ever. I want to pursue this more strongly than ever, but I still didn't really have a game plan as far as how's Wolf and Iron going to make money and that kind of stuff. So it was just a mission. And it stayed like that for a while, actually. Rustic, when it came about, because I had had some experience with Wolf and Iron, so I think Wolf had been going for about 3 years, but not really making any money, not doing anything in that space. But I had a lot of experience in terms of building an audience. I felt confident and comfortable just in the space of putting myself out there and my thoughts out there and validating them. Mm-hmm. Even if other people didn't agree, I would still feel like this was I felt comfortable in my own, speaking my own opinions and having my own thoughts. And so it made it easier when Rustic came about to say, this is a good idea. And I really strongly believe in this. And so when we launched, there was a lot more confidence behind launching Rustic than when I launched Wolf and Iron. And then actually in turn, Rustic's success has helped me to have confidence that Wolf and Iron will be successful financially as well, but that it's going to be a different kind of business, and it's going to be much more of a mission-minded and longer-term investment than Rustic, because Rustic's very simple. You make a ring, you show pictures of it online, and people go, these are awesome, like you guys did, and they spend money, right?
Nice. Which is always a good combination, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a wedding thing, so people are already used to spending a lot of money. There's a good bit of markup on the rings, and so it's a very different kind of business that has had tremendous success without much of an investment up front. The most challenging thing for Rustic has really just been keeping up with the success. Wolf and Iron, on the other hand, even if you just break it out and look at the store piece, we have a store where we've got some beard oils that we've launched, we've got some T-shirts, we've got some prints and things like that. Well, we're in a market amongst many other people who are doing the same thing, and we're trying to help. We're trying to kind of niche it down to the guys that are really just interested in what it means to be a man and focus on those guys. But it's a flooded market. And so it's going to be a much different kind of experience in building that business versus building the Rustic and Maine business.
Yeah. And I do think it's a neat combination though of, even though you're in kind of just this purely e-commerce space in a sense when it comes to the rings, the fact that it's still connected to something that plays such a big role in men's lives, which is their marriage. Is that something that you did on purpose? Is that something that just kind of you realized one day, hey, I'm making these rings and that's cool, but it also ties into something that I'm passionate about, which is men being better husbands and, the role that marriage takes? Is that something that you kind of knew up front, or that you kind of realized once you got into it?
You guys are a lot quicker than I am on this kind of stuff, apparently, because it took me a while, and I was very much focused in, well, I'll tell you what the odd thing about it, and this is part of just my makeup, is that I tend to compartmentalize things. And so when I'm thinking about making rings, initially I just thought woodworking, crafting, creating something that has a story. And it actually took me a while to realize that I was in the sort of the wedding and marriage space, like in terms of sales and stuff like that, which is probably the first thing people would think about. But for me, it was like, I'm a woodworker, I'm a craftsman. I make these things and people can wear them for whatever. Once I finally began to realize, okay, business is off the ground and things are rolling, and oh wait, I'm marketing primarily to men and with Rustic, and hey, I've got this other thing where guys really need to know about what it means to be a good husband, a good father. And once that clicked for me, that the people who are coming in through Rustic in Maine are at this point in their life where they're probably being challenged for the first time to really be a provider and to be a good husband. And they really feel a strong need for some kind of coaching and mentoring in the areas of life that they just have no familiarity. Well, that'd be a great time to introduce them to Wolf and Iron. And so now those things are starting to come together where we're actually taking advantage of Rustic and Maine customers in a good way and introducing them to Wolf and Iron. So for example, last month we had, for our free Facebook group, we have something called Rally Points, and they're just a free online training event where I do a presentation. So I do some speaking. I usually talk about something personal from my life. And then I'll do like a whiteboard kind of session, a digital whiteboard type of thing. And it was actually on marriage, and it was called "Become the Hero of Your Marriage." And so I sent that email out. I sent an email out to all of our Rustic and Maine customers and said, "Guys, it mostly goes to the ladies actually, but I actually did a little video and I just said, hey, this is what we're doing over here with this thing called Wolf and Iron. I know you're going to be, this is something that you want to be a part of." And we had like 600% growth in our Facebook group just from that email. And so it absolutely is these things are connected. And the more that I realize how they can be connected and when they should be connected, the more that we see Wolf and Iron being able to grab some of the customer base of Rustic and Maine.
Yeah, that's really cool, that connection. And I'm actually going to go backwards here on you a little bit. And you mentioned something that when you were in Asheville that you felt like, and I'm bringing this up because I think this is something a lot of men battle, even though I think a lot of men would not want to admit this, or maybe they admit it to themselves, but they don't admit it to anyone else. But I really relate to what you said. And you said that you had a hard time acknowledging in your head that your ideas were valid. And I have a very similar background to yours in that my dad was an alcoholic, left when I was 2. He's alive, but he's chosen not to be a part of my life. I haven't seen him in 14 years. And I know that I battle that head trash quite a bit of I think it's that thing when you're a boy and your dad abandons you and doesn't want any part of you. I think there's a part of that it makes you feel invalid because, I mean, your dad's supposed to love you more than anybody, right? And he chose not to, or never did, whatever the case may be for him. But, so I know for me, that's something I battle a lot is trying to acknowledge that, hey, my ideas are valid. Even when we started Suited for Life, a similar concept of helping men, I still battle those things in my head of, is this a viable thing? Is this something that men really need? And I've been and I don't know if you found this too, I've been blown away by how many men really do need this and have similar backstories to you and I. And this is a real world need in a world that's moving very quickly away from Christianity and very quickly away from manhood. It's really neat that, you and I both have a similar background we probably both had these ideas in our head. Is this really a valid thing? And come to find out as we push through that and realize, you know what, it is valid because so many men find themselves in the same spot you and I are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. And you're absolutely right. I think that, every idea that we have, I've got 100 other ideas of businesses that I'd want to start, and some of them are admittedly stupid. And so, not every idea is good, but we shouldn't be in that place where we invalidate our ideas, because what we're really doing is we're invalidating our worth a lot of times. We don't realize that. We just kind of stay in this place of just questioning is kind of what it looks like. Yeah, maybe that's something I want to do. Maybe that's a book I should write. Maybe that's a business I should start. I just don't know. And I think what holds us back is this, there's a pervasive thought there. Like you said, head trash is really what it is. That makes us question whether or not we're worth the success that could come from sharing our ideas and being who we are and just being real, or our ideas actually coming to life. We almost kind of feel like that maybe that's for somebody else. That's not for me. That kind of success and that kind of life, that's not for me. That's for somebody else. Or who would listen to what I have to say? What makes me special, in comparison to somebody else who's had greater struggles or greater fortunes, whatever the case may be. And I absolutely agree. I think a lot of that does come from what we were either told or were not told through our parenting. And, especially for those of us who have absent fathers, there's a lot of that where we're always questioning ourselves. Like John Eldredge always says, we're asking the question, do I have what it takes? Mm-hmm. And there's a fear there of finding out, nope, no, Mike, you don't have what it takes. And, yep. And you may not have what it takes to gain what it takes. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think we fall into this trap. We all have moments where we fall into that trap of, I don't want to find out that I don't have what it takes. So I'm not even going to put myself out there. I'm not even going to try. I'm not even going to write that book. I'm not even going to start a website, whatever it is. I'm just not even going to try because that's better. And I can even just keep telling myself that, if I started it would probably work, but we can just fall back on that instead of actually putting ourselves out there and running that risk. I think that's a great point. I think that's very true. And I know it's definitely something that all men battle. So what are some of the things that you feel has either helped you or that you would tell someone else of if they're battling those types of issues, they're battling all that head trash, like Jason said, what are some of the things that guys do to kind of take some steps forward?
Well, I'll tell you guys, for me, obviously being a Christian is huge on this. We've actually got a rally point coming up next week on confidence. And one of the things that I'm going to be talking about is that, your dad is actually not the authority of your worth. Your parents actually aren't the authority over that. And in fact, you're not the authority over your own worth. A lot of times we hear this sort of the spin of, you're kind of in control of your own self-esteem and your own value and worth, and you kind of have to take that up. And it's actually not the case. Your maker is the only authority over your actual worth and your actual value. And from what we can tell through the, scripture, is that God, not because we deserve it necessarily, but God has, for whatever reason, has said, you're extremely valuable. You have an eternal worth. And you're valuable enough that Christ would come down, he would die for you and be raised for you, that history would be moved in such a way so that you would have the opportunity to know God eternally. That's pretty worthy, Yeah. And that is the authority. You have to either accept that or you're just going to lie to yourself and say that's not the case. Anything else other than that is a lie. And so I think, resting on that and going, anytime you have that doubt of like, do I have what it takes? Am I worthwhile? Am I worth the effort? Those kinds of things that kind of crush us. You got to say, look, I don't actually have a right to speak to that. The only right I have is to accept what has already been proclaimed by God. And so I think for me, that's the biggest thing.
Yeah. And I think to kind of parlay on that a little bit, if you speak on entrepreneurship and and how our faith intertwines in with that. And I know for me, so like I said a minute ago, I battle some of that head trash. I battle some of that, just like you said, Mike, about, why is my story any better, or why am I an authority on this, or who am I to tell men how to live their lives? And not that we're trying to tell them how to, but just maybe facilitating a conversation about it. But I know one of the ways I've overcome that I've owned 6 different businesses now, and the ways I've overcome some of that head trash and maybe not worthy enough is through a very hardcore faith, and from a perspective that you already said, but also that I don't think God's going to lead us down a path that's going to wreck us. And what I mean by that is, when I always have this thought in my head, should I do this? It's always, yes, I'm going to take that leap of faith, because I know either God's going to keep that door open and that's the path I'm supposed to go down, or he's going to shut it pretty quick and I'm going to know with absolute certainty that's not the path he wants me to go down. So I'll choose another. But that faith in him is what really has helped me overcome some of that head trash. And I know if any men listening battle that, and they wonder, can I do it, or should I do it, or am I good enough? And maybe lean on your faith a little more and tell yourself, I'm going to do it. And if it doesn't work out, it was because I needed to learn a lesson from it. So that's the reason, and God's going to shut that door and open up another one. So I think really leaning on your faith when you're having those hard decisions to make in your life on, should I do this, should I not, it can be invaluable. And I know that's what's helped me kind of jump when I've been scared to jump.
Yeah, it's really good. I agree with that. And just kind of another thought I had while you were talking there, kind of inspired something here, was that we need to look at new risk and new things as not a pass or fail test, but of our manhood and do we have what it takes? But just look at it as simply an adventure. Let's just go on an adventure and see what's to be had. When we started Rustic in Maine, there's some risk involved. I think we took out like a $7,000 loan or something like that. And I know some other businesses, you may need to take out a $100,000 loan or whatever the case is. And there's different risk. But man, that's part of the adventure. I mean, that should excite you. That's part of the fun. And if you look at it as I'm either going to pass this test or I'm going to fail this test, and you kind of take that burden on for yourself, that's not the right way to look at it. And I think most successful entrepreneurs don't think about it that way. They think about it as one adventure at a time, and let's go do something fun. Even if it doesn't work out, the adventure is part of the excitement. That's one of the things that we really, really enjoy about being entrepreneurs, is just, let's see what happens. Here's an idea. Let's go do it and see what happens. Maybe it'll fail. Maybe it'll work. Let's just see.
Yeah. And I think that plays into what you were talking about a minute ago when it comes to our worth. And, it's really easy when you are an entrepreneur and you have your own business to tie a lot of your worth up in that. It's one thing if you're going to a job every day and I just go to this place and I'm invested to a degree, but it's still not mine. But as an entrepreneur, it's easy to kind of latch onto it. Well, this is my thing. This is what I started. So if it succeeds or fails, that's a measure of my worth, when instead we can look at it from the angle that you're saying of look at it as an adventure, because our worth is ultimately in God. That's where our worth lies. And so, we get to do some cool stuff while we're here on earth, but our ultimate worth is found in him, not in this business that I just started. And I think when we look at it from that perspective, it takes a little bit of the pressure off too, because it's not, if this business fails, then I'm a failure as a person. Mm-hmm. Or if this business takes off, then I'm a success and I have succeeded in life. And we can separate that a little bit and honestly compartmentalize to a certain degree and say, work is one thing. We want to be successful. Absolutely. We want to grow. We want to do all these different things, but it's just part of the process that we're going through on this earth, where our true worth and our true value is found in our relationship with God.
Yep. Very good.
Yeah. And I'll say too, is that I said I started 6 businesses. Well, there's a reason you start 6, because maybe they didn't all work out the way you wanted them to. Some have, some haven't. And I can tell you this, that even being through some successes and some failures, my self-worth is as high as it's ever been, just because of what you two men are saying now. And my self-worth is given to me from God. It's not given to me from validation from a successful business or validation from anyone here on earth. And if you can combine actually what Mike you're saying, combine with that, just the element of God gives me my worth, not my success or failure of this business, combined with the fact that, this is an adventure. I like that attitude. It makes it instead of making this pressure cooker, it makes it a fun thing.
Yeah.
Combine those two, man. Let's go on an adventure. And no matter what happens, God still loves me, and I'm going to be a success in his eyes no matter what. It really takes a ton of the pressure off.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, and so I'm going to kind of tie this in too. So in the midst of all of this stuff that's gone on in your head over the last several years, and that's gone on in mine and Jason's as well at various degrees over the years, how did you communicate all that to your wife? How did you go from all this stuff in my head that I'm thinking about, I want to start this, I have these ideas, maybe I had ideas in the past that maybe haven't worked. How did you kind of start that conversation? Because it wasn't just you, right? You've got a whole family over here to consider. How did you kind of start that conversation or pull that into it, or even just think about it as you were starting this process over the last couple of years?
It's actually been a tremendous challenge because I'm an introvert by nature, and there's a lot of things going on in my head. There's also a lot of positivity where I convince myself of things, Wolf and Iron is going to be super successful. Rustic in Maine is going to be ridiculously successful. And so, kind of bringing all those things into points that I can relate to my wife and say, here's why I believe it's going to be successful, or even just having a game plan, that I had to share with her, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take out this loan for Rustic as an example. And, we're going to have, we want to make this much money by this amount of time in order to see if the business is viable or not. Some of those things that's technical stuff. I think just about anybody can do.
Right.
To be honest, one of the things that's convinced my wife the most is usually not me. What typically happens is when she tells somebody else the ideas that I have or that we have, and they go, that's a great idea. And she keeps hearing that from other people. For whatever reason, that does far more than me just trying to, because I've kind of got a dog in the fight, or I'm probably biased, right, to my own opinions.
Sure.
As an example, we've got this, I make some kombucha at home. I like kombucha. And I've shared it with some friends and stuff like that over the last probably year or so. And lately we actually had some guys come over who are remodeling the house. And my wife was like, have you guys ever had kombucha? Because they were asking, what is this thing over here in this big jar?
Yep.
And they were like, okay, it's kombucha. And then she's trying to explain it to them. And they tried it and they're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And they're all talking about it. And they about drained the thing, dry, drinking all my kombucha. And they're like, when can we buy some? I mean, they're like fiending for it. And she's like, we've got to start this kombucha business. Right now it's the time, the iron's hot. We got to strike right now. And, obviously we can't do that because we've got too many other things going on. But when she sees that validation from other people, I think that gets her excited because she knows that it's not just me having the idea. Other people are excited about this as well. So for Rustic, as an example, we actually went to a guy that we really respect. He's a successful businessman, and he's just an all around just good guy. And we kind of told him the idea, and we said, are we crazy? Is this something that will work or not work? And he thought it was a great idea, And so having that sort of outside, and every entrepreneur should have this, right? You should have somebody outside checking you and giving you feedback as to, here's the pitfalls that you're not seeing. Here's the ways in which it may be successful. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? But those have actually gone a lot further in convincing my wife than anything that I have in terms of, a pitch or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we make kombucha as well. So we have that in common, but I always have a hard time. Man,
I don't make kombucha. I'm feeling left out now. My sister-in-law does, but I'm going to have to start picking up some tips now. You guys are in.
We'll have to send you some recipes. But we'll have a hard time making people or having people try it when they see the big ugly SCOBY in there. So they tend to want to run the other way. How, and maybe this is something that you don't think a ton about, but it's something I've started to think about a lot lately. And when it comes to the business world and just not just business, but how we live our lives is, do you ever think about, the legacy you want to leave for your kids? Does that ever play into your mindset of where Rustic and Maine is going, where Wolf and Iron is going, and where, I guess, the legacy that Mike Yarbrough wants to leave for his family and his kids? Does that ever cross your mind?
Yeah, all the time, actually. And it comes in different forms. Some forms it's like, am I sacrificing some moments of fatherhood in order to leave a quote unquote legacy behind? Because running two businesses is a challenge. It takes time. Both of my boys are older. I've got a 16 and a 19-year-old. And so the 19-year-old's actually off at college. The 16-year-old's still at home, obviously. But there's those kind of questions come up quite a bit in my mind, trying to balance life or trying to make sure that I'm hitting my target, which my target is my family. I'm not really trying to balance things. There's that. There's also I always wondered about if Wolf and Iron becomes, successful, as I believe it will, and we begin to we become known as what it looks like to be manly, and that men kind of relate in their minds, Wolf and Iron, to manliness and good fathers and that kind of stuff. What kind of pressure does that put on my boys to kind of live up to that standard? What kind of pressure does it put on me to live up to that standard? In one way I've signed up for it, in one way they haven't, right? Always, like if you think about Theodore Roosevelt's kids, as they grew up, people judging them and thinking like, you're not like your dad at all. You're lazy, or you don't read 1,000 books a year, or whatever the case is. That's, in some ways, I want my kids to be proud of me, but I also want them to be their own men. And so there's also the financial legacy and that kind of stuff, which can go good or it can go bad. They've grown up most of their life really struggling to have, we didn't have any spare income, I guess. And now we do. And it's changed things like, let's go get some food. Let's go out to eat. Our Christmases are going to look a little different,
Yeah.
Things like that, and it's going to be, if all things go well, it'll be different probably for their kids. Right. And there's those kinds of things, like how do I instill the same kind of lessons into, make sure they don't grow up spoiled or something like that. So those are the kind of things I worry about. But yeah, I do. I think about it quite a bit.
Yeah. And that's, I think for all of us especially as we get older, and your kids start getting a little bit older and your kids are growing up, and you start seeing more, you start looking into the future a little bit more, instead of when your kids are really little. At least it was this way for me. There's a little bit of just survival instinct that kicks in. Like, I just got to make it. I got to keep my kids alive. I want to make sure everybody, so we get kind of in this survival mode. And then as they grow up, they get a little bit more independent. I got 2 boys as well. They're a little bit younger, 10 and 8. But still, as they're getting more independence and growing up a little bit, you start to see more of what it will look like as they start to turn into young men and then adult men, and what that process looks like. So I think that for anyone that has kids, for any man that has kids, as they get older, I think you tend to look a little bit farther down the road and see, what impact am I having on them, and what does that look like, and what does that mean? And are your kids involved in any of the stuff that you're doing with Rustic or with Wolf and Iron? Or are they kind of doing their own thing right now?
Yeah, they're kind of doing their own thing for the most part. It's interesting. I thought with Rustic, we've got a lot of odd jobs and kind of chores and things that need to happen. And, I thought, they'll want to do this. They'll want to be part of this and make some money. And, after 16 or 19 years of having dad tell you what to do all the time, they're kind of done with that. And I totally get that. Actually, and I think they both were lifeguards this year. And I think having that outside accountability from somebody else other than dad is actually really good for them. So even though they've been involved in some things here, I mean, they'll help clean up or they'll help make boxes for shipping and things like that. It's sort of like we kind of have to pull them along and get them to come in and be a part of this. They do it a bit begrudgingly, because they still feel like it's just sort of the family thing we got to do. I imagine it'd be like growing up like with an Italian family that's got a restaurant, and you're just growing up, serving dishes and doing whatever has to be done. It's just part of what you have to do. And so they don't see it as this awesome business opportunity.
Right.
It's different for them.
No, it's just work. It's funny you say that, because I've owned gyms primarily, and my last one, I kind of had this vision. I told my wife even, I was like, you know what? It'd be really neat because I'll have my wife involved on some level, and then I've got 4 kids. I got a 12-year-old, a 14-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 10-year-old, and an 8-year-old. So my 14 and 12-year-old, they're old enough now to help out and pull their weight. So I kind of had this vision in my head, and this the kind of dad I am, I guess. But I was like, we can have almost like a family business. They can't train clients, but they can do the odd jobs. They can clean. They can sweep up. They can do all the stuff like that. And I got all excited about it, and I sat my 2 oldest boys down. Honestly, got a true story. And I said, look, this is what we're going to do, and then you'll be at the gym with dad all the time. And they both looked at me like I had 3 heads.
Yeah.
And I said, what do you think? And they said, No. And my one said no. The other one said, do I have to clean bathrooms? I said, yeah, probably. Nope, then I'm out. And they were completely out. They wanted no part of it. And it just wrecked my dream.
So I remember growing up, both of my grandparents, my granddads had, one had a painting business and one had a construction business. And the one who had a construction business, I'd work for him a lot during the summers. And, I was kind of coming along, learning kind of the trade a little bit. I mean, I'm young. I'm like 12, 13, 14 years old, something like that. And usually I just worked during the summer until I had enough money to buy whatever I wanted. And then I was out. I was done. And I remember there was this moment where I thought, Granddaddy wants me to come on and kind of take this over and sort of be the family business and do this for the rest of my life. And I'm thinking, it's freaking hot outside. I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
I can't, I don't even know how he did it, because I would fall asleep on the ride home, just wear me out. But I remember telling that to my grandmother and saying, I don't know how to break this bad news to my granddad that I don't want to do this type of work. And it really wasn't a big deal for him. I mean, he enjoyed me being there and kind of sharing some of the lessons with me, but he really didn't expect me to just, pick up the mantle and kind of take the business over or anything like that. And I think that as dads, if there are other dads listening to this that kind of have kids who have the same response as what you and I are saying, you got to realize our kids are actually learning a lot from us by watching us in these businesses. So even though they may not be participating, just the concept, guys, that someone could go out and start a business from literally their garage or an idea or a blog or whatever the case is, and that could become a sustainable way of life, not only for them, but for others. And that, the sky's the limit kind of thing, American dream and all that, that is huge for them. And they will find some way to implement that optimism somewhere in their life, even if they don't necessarily do the same thing that you're doing.
Yeah, and I think that's fantastic. And I'll tell you a kind of something going on in my house now along those lines. But I know that coming from a similar background to you, Mike, with my father, is there was not a great legacy left for me. And that's one of the reasons I brought that question up to you. But I didn't grow up in an overly Christian home. My mom was a Christian, but we didn't go to church much and all that. And obviously had a horrible role model as a father. And there wasn't a lot left to me legacy wise. So I kind of took it upon myself that it's my job now to create that legacy moving forward. And I want to do that through raising my kids in a strong Christian home. I'm going to do that through being a good husband and a good father. But one of the ways is also through business and entrepreneurship. And that's one of the reasons I beat the entrepreneurship drum so much. It's not that if you're not an entrepreneur, you're any less valuable or you're any lesser than any entrepreneur. That's not the idea. But I love the idea of entrepreneurship for many reasons. One is, it's a challenge, but it provides freedom. You're creating your own thing, and you're making your own way in this world. And you're not building somebody else's dream for them. You're doing your own dreams, all those things that we know. But so that one of the kids I was telling about that didn't want any part of cleaning the gym came to me about 4 months ago and said, "Hey, I'm going to start a business like you." And I said, "Doing what?" He said, "Well, I'm going to start mowing lawns." And that's the traditional thing that kids do. But here, fast forward, and I just said, "All right, dude, go for it." And we'll see what happens. And fast forward 4 months, he's made like $1,200 a summer or something ridiculous like that. And that's something I would have never done at 12 because I didn't have that model in my life to show me that that's the way to do it. And now all my other kids are starting to come up with business ideas and things that they want to do. And I'm talking about my 8-year-old's coming up with things, and who knows if it'll come to fruition. But the point is, guys, listen, and don't ever, like Mike was saying, don't ever lose sight of the fact that your kids are watching, your kids are noticing, whether they say it or not, they are. And they are going to be highly influenced by the decisions you make and the things you do.
Yep. Great.
Yeah, 100%. And, if there was and I know we'll start wrapping up here in just a minute too, but what are some of the major things that you want to leave your kids with? If you had to, obviously as men and fathers, we could come up with a list of 1,000 things. I want to make sure they know this, and I want to make sure they can handle this. But what are some of the main things that you want to leave for your kids, especially as they're starting to, that 16 to 19 range, that's an adult basically. Yep. And then, so, what are some of the main things that you want to leave them with?
Let's see. That's a good question. I should think about things that I wish I were left with, like an armory would be cool. some cool swords and guns and stuff like that. Maybe a
Right.
tank. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Man, if you leave your kids a tank, I think you get into the Dad Hall of Fame right there.
Yeah, you win. You win.
Yep. But the trick would be to like make it give them sort of like they've got to go and find it, some clues that they've got to, travel the world, and then all the, they discover the whatever. That'd be awesome. I don't know, that'd be kind of fun, but in all seriousness, I think the best thing would be an example. I want to leave them at least an example of one honorable man in their life, if they don't have any others. I'm sure they'll have others, but
Right.
One man that they can look at and go, my dad wasn't perfect, but he walked with integrity, and he took risk, and he loved well, and he overcame his struggles, and he loved God, and he, I could see Christ in him and in his life, and how he interacted with others. And, those are the kind of things that I think are going to go so much further. That's going to have generation upon generation impact, more than even the tank,
Yeah.
although the tank may come in, handy down the road, who knows, but
Yeah.
you can do both actually. But I think that's really what it is, guys. I mean, more than anything else, I want to set that example. And a lot of it is probably me trying to make up for the example I didn't have in my life. And, at least not from my dad. And, so I think that'd be the main thing, just an honorable example to follow.
That's awesome, man. That's great. And so let's wrap up with a couple of questions here, a little off the grid questions here, and then we'll come back around and let you talk a little more about Wolf and Main and reiterate kind of the mission of Wolf and Main, Wolf and Iron, and kind of reiterate the mission of that. But so if you had the world's attention for 30 seconds and 30 seconds only, but you had the entire world listening to you, what would you say?
Wow, some serious pressure.
Yeah.
So like,
But you only have 30 seconds to think about it.
That's right.
30
well,
seconds
this
is
is plausible, because maybe I've hacked the streams or something like that.
Yeah, right.
But I'm going to get caught in 30 seconds. I'd probably just reiterate what Christ said: love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And I think for 30 seconds, I would just repeat that. And because I would want that to really sink into people. I think that a lot of times we don't give due credit to just the power of Scripture and just the truth of it. And so, that cuts through.
Yeah, and it's interesting because that's the beauty of Scripture, the simplicity in what you said. If people really internalize that though and put it into practice, that alone would change the world. So that's an amazing one.
Yeah, and man, my question sounds dumb now. No, we have another question that we ask everybody when they finish kind of their last question on here. And Jason always asks one that's a little bit different, so it's always kind of unique to the guest. But this one is one that we want to ask every man that comes on this podcast. And it's an interesting one because it could go a lot of different directions. It could go more kind of theoretical and conceptual. It could go more practical. But the question is, what do you believe that every man should have?
We already covered the tank thing, so I can't say that.
Besides the tank.
I think the number one character virtue that a man should have is integrity. I think that he should value truth for truth's sake. I think that he should value his own character, like his own integrity. I think he can't be honorable. I don't think he can actually be any of the other virtues if he does not have integrity. I think a lack of integrity would ruin every other thing that he may be, that he may claim to have or have put on as a virtue in his life. And I think that he's got to look himself in the mirror and be honest with who he is. He's got to be honest with his deficiencies. I think he's got to be honest with even just accepting things like we talked about at the very beginning here of, who does God say I am? That's a form of integrity, is believing the truth over and above the nonsense and the head trash that he's got going on. So I think that's the number one thing I say a man has to have. And I think that if he's honest with himself, I think that the desire for truth and integrity will point him to God at some point.
That's great. And, it's interesting. We brought up legacy earlier, and that's one of the things I spend so much time talking to my kids about integrity, because I think, I know it's cliche at this point, but I try to instill in them that, integrity is what you do when nobody's looking. And if I can really get them to own that, because it's hard for kids to to process that and understand that. But that's one I'm going to beat into their heads over the years, because I think I'm with you, as integrity is everything. And without it, nothing else matters. So another awesome answer. So we'll wrap up with this, let you touch a little more on Wolf and Iron here. So if you close your eyes, man, and you look 2, 4, 6, 8 years in the future, what mission do you hope either Wolf and Iron has accomplished, or what mission do you hope you're working towards when it's all said and done? What is your ultimate goal for Wolf and Iron, and what change in the world would you like to see caused by Wolf and Iron?
You know, the ultimate goal of Wolf and Iron is like I said, is to help men heed the high call that's on their lives. And I would want Wolf and Iron to be a household name, honestly, not because I'm doing something special, but because I believe that there are a lot of men doing good things that other men need to be watching and seeing, and they could say, here are some guys. You know, they don't have it all together, but here are some guys that you can see as what it looks like to be a man. It's not what you're going to find on the news. It's not what you're going to find in the headlines. Here are some men living it out and doing it not perfectly, but genuinely. And when I talk about heeding the high call, some guys hear that and they know immediately, oh, I can feel what that means. I don't necessarily know how to put that into words, but I know there's something inside of me that resonates with that phrase, the high call. What I think about it is like this. It's the calling that God places on the hearts of every man. And I think some men kind of hear it softly. I think some more strongly, but it really calls us to rise well above the status quo, and to reject passivity, and to take up our courage, and to live with a legacy mindset. And if guys can capture that in their mind, and they can say, when they think of Wolf and Iron and they think of that, then that's mission accomplished for me. And that's really what I want. I want Wolf and Iron to be a household name, so that men know where to go when they're looking for inspiration as to what it means to live life as a man.
That's awesome, man. And I got to say too, we both really appreciate you coming on with us today. This has been a lot of fun. It's always good to talk with like-minded men, and because I think being able to lean on each other in that regard is a big part of what's going to help us leave the kind of legacy that we want to leave is being able to lean on other men of God, other strong leaders, other strong businessmen. Being able to lean on each other, I think, is huge. So it's been great having you on. It's been great having a conversation. For everybody listening too, I know we said it at the beginning that it wasn't just because we were having him on that we wanted you to go check out Rustic in Maine, but seriously, go check out Rustic in Maine, and then go see Wolf and Iron as well. Mike, any last thoughts you want to share with folks, or any direction you kind of want to point people towards?
No, guys, I want to say thank you for this great conversation. Some very strong questions and some deep thoughts from you guys. I really, really appreciate this. We didn't just keep things at surface level. We kind of dug in, and I think that's excellent. I know guys are going to get a lot from this.
Awesome. Great, Mike. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you, guys.
All right. And thanks again to Mike for being on the show. We cannot tell you how appreciative we are of that. And hopefully you do check out his two organizations, Rustic in Maine and Wolf and Iron. You will not be disappointed on either, I promise. So with that, we'll wrap it up. Couple last things. One is, I cannot tell you how important iTunes reviews are to a new podcast. So if you're enjoying the show and you want more of it, please go to iTunes and leave us a quick review. We really, really, really appreciate it. And lastly, go to our private Facebook page, also called Suited for Life, where we dive even deeper into these topics, and we really go into the 5 domains that we discuss, and that's faith, family, fitness, finances, and friendships. And join the conversation and be a part of it and help us grow this cause, grow this movement. So hopefully we can make some real world difference out there. So that's all we got for today. And we will see you guys next week. Thanks again. Bye-bye.